Welcome to lesson 3 of personal finance. This lesson will be on the topic of employment. So the basic definition of employment is to have a job or to, in more complex terms, provide yourself as a service to others in exchange for payment. Here are a couple of reasons listed for getting a job. The main one on the left being a stable income, which is very important, especially because a stable income allows you to expand into other alternative forms of income, which we discussed in the last lesson. The stable income is always the basis for that. But also listed is employee benefits, and we have an example listed here, and that is health insurance. And typically your company, not in all cases, but in most, will provide you with a lot of these benefits, which makes employment a lot better for the individual. What we see here is what jobs are being demanded the most right now in the US workforce. So by far the largest one is services, and we have two kinds here. First of all, professional and business services, and that is 1 in every 5 new non-farm jobs. We'll see some examples of that in the future. Next up, we have health and education services, which made up for 44,000 new jobs in October alone. And then third, we have construction and manufacturing, which also made up to 60,000 jobs if combined. So the question is, why exactly are these jobs being demanded? Well, first of all, we have services, which made up the two first categories we saw in the previous slide. And that's basically because the US economy has developed and become a service-based economy, which provides services to the citizens of America and the world. And in case you didn't know what a service was, it can range from just being a hairdresser to being a financial consultant. We did see as well construction and manufacturing. And ever since the Industrial Revolution in the United States, construction and manufacturing has been one of the most demanded sectors, and that probably won't change in the time being, because in our history we've always had some demand for it. When we're thinking of employment, it's important to think of educational requirements for employment. So just to get started, I have some listed here. For construction and manufacturing, we have a high school diploma listed as preferable, but not always required, especially if you're going to be performing manual labor. But then when you get into more complex sectors like professional and business services and health and education services, it's probably best that you obtain college level education in the form of a bachelor's degree, or even further, a professional degree. So an interesting statistic we have listed here is that of unemployment and job availability. So there's a little discrepancy between these numbers that we'll explain in a second. But if we look at November 2018, 6 million Americans found themselves unemployed, which means that they were searching for a job but could not find one. However, in October 2018, there were 7.1 million reported job openings. So why is there a difference in this number? The answer to this question is education. People that are unemployed often do not have the level of education that is required to fill in the job openings in the US workforce. This is why the idea of education is so important in getting employed, because you have much higher chances of receiving speedy employment. So what we have is one of the most important levels of education you can attain is college education. If it's possible, and sometimes it's not, which is fine, but if it is, it's always best to obtain a college level education. Mostly because people who are going to want to employ you will be much more willing to employ a person that has a degree. If you look at the graph on the right here, you'll see how big of a difference it might make to have a bachelor's degree as opposed to a high school diploma in terms of income throughout your life. However, I have it written here that not having a college education does not mean it will be impossible to get a job. Matter of fact, a lot of high school graduates without a college degree are employed in the current year and month. So if we look at the significance of a level of education, we'll find a trend in the graph. Um, Basically, the trend is that the higher your level of education, the lower the unemployment rate, and therefore the lower the odds of you being unemployed are. And the inverse can be said about earnings. The higher the level of education, the higher your weekly earnings will be. So just to conclude, some main takeaways we have for this lesson. First of all, getting a job means that you'll receive a steady income, which is incredibly important in personal finance, but also employee benefits. Uh, in terms of the U.S. workforce in its current state, services, construction, and manufacturing are in very high demand. And perhaps one of the most important points we have in this lesson is education and the importance in your professional career. Thank you.